So it becomes quite complex if you want to have an experience which is called masturbation within an energetic expression. How do you do it without a relationship? You do it with yourself, as a self-expression, where you do not involve another being, where you do not take their energy, so that you could have satisfaction. Because the moment you take something, there is another law within the law of attraction, the law of balance. Positive, negative will always move and exchange. In that movement of exchange, it discharges. That means as the positive moves towards the negative, it's giving the energy to the negative, and the negative becomes the positive. And then the positive moves to the negative, and it gives its energy, because that's how the energy flow, to the positive gives it to the negative. And so it moves to and fro, to and fro. Moves the energy. We don't see that because we are that energy moving. We are experiencing the energy as it moves. So we are either positive or we are negative. We're not considering that we have become this very energy that is moving as the mind. And we start to forget about our real reality, the physical reality that exists here, and we don't look after it anymore because we're trying to satisfy our imaginary reality, where we have a positive and a negative. In the real reality you have what? You do labor, you eat food, it creates energy in your physical body. The waste products is released through shitting. It goes back into the earth. It is recycled back into the plants and again becomes food. I mean, we always eat our own shit. We just don't want to look at it that way. Every piece of food you ever eat that comes from the earth is coming from manure. Either dog shit, animal shit, human shit, or shit that from the trees that is decomposing, that is regenerated through the sun. And photosynthesis is an example into food that we eat. It turns into energy, physical energy with which we do things. Once that energy is finished, we need to eat again. Have a look what happens in the mind. It also needs a feeding ground. What is fascinating, that we have created ourselves as beings that exist not in the physical, but exist as personalities, as ideas within our mind of ourselves. We judge our physicality, we want to look a certain way, and we go into all kinds of regimes of how we should be looking, because we have this perfect picture of what we want to be, instead of accepting who we are and working with what we are. Then we create our whole world not according to what the physical requires, but according to what we mentally require. We call that mental stimulus. We call that intelligence. We call them all kinds of wonderful things. But what has that brought us in this physical reality? We have a world in peril. We have beings being abused sexually, which starts off, your sexual abuse that starts off as an imaginary abuse becomes an obsession, and it's all done in secret. And that secret law of attraction attract people to each other that ends up in abuse situations. Your child may end up in an abuse situation because you masturbated and imagined, and now your sins are being visited upon your sins of the fathers are being visited upon your children up to the seventh generation. What does that mean? They have to discharge the energetic responsibility you have created while you were abusing another being using energy. So now your child gets abused by an unknown stranger, a bad man. But you love masturbation, and you love to imagine an unknown man knocking at the front door, walking into your house and taking you violently and taking to a massive orgasmic experience. And you imagine that and all the time, and you masturbate about it. It's so wonderful. Now it happens to your child. And you're mad at the world. come on, some self-honesty here. Who created this? Oh, great Creator. Let's go back to a fascinating point. I mean, you can't remember anything before your birth. And you can access some of the information using hypnosis. But if you go and study people that has done this quite meticulously, like Newton, you'll notice that the information is very limited, and as he found out very specifically, which is why his work is unusual, he found out that it depends on what question you ask to determine what information or answer you'll get. So that means quite a lot. Very few people consider the question to be asked, and is even willing to consider the answer you'll get to the question you're asking. So if you're not willing to ask the question, I mean, it's in our religions, isn't it? Ask and ye shall receive. So if you really want to know, you have to ask. Now, what do you know? You know you're in a oneness reality, and a reality of energy, where you came into it and you can't remember exactly where you come from. You at some stage during your small years suddenly became able to speak, to remember things, to walk, and to do things. But you can't remember exactly when. Then after that you created yourself through the education system that was provided. And according to that you have decided on your place in society, you've desired it and you've constructed it. Then you've worked within the system, making sure that you survive, because that is what you've been taught. You've been taught by mom and dad, for instance, you must have a degree, you must have a good job, so that you always have money. And the only way mom and dad could justify all the starving in the world was to say, that's God's will.